The Search Podcast USA Edition series is sponsored by PGC. PGC are the longest serving employer of record in North America and can compliantly engage contractors across both the US and Canada on behalf of staffing and recruitment businesses. Our turnkey solution offers a unique access point to the largest staffing market in the world. To find out more, visit us at pgcgroup.com.
Hi everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Search Podcast. I'm Elliott Manning, the Managing Director of Payment Recruitment UK and US. Been doing a podcast now for quite some time. Had a lot of different guests on here, but this one in particular is special. Not had someone who's been in the US who in different terms has completed it, and has done something really, really special over there, and built a fantastic business. But I want to take that introduction away from you, that you do that yourself.
Hey, Elliott, I'm so happy to be here. I've been listening to your podcast, and it's super stoked to be interviewed by you. So I'm Diane Prince, and I've been in the staffing space, mostly staffing. I've done some contingent, but I'm mostly staffing, and built a couple of companies and sold them. And I've been doing this for almost 3 decades.
Wow.
And kind of randomly got into it, and I share that story because it started in London.
Yeah, well, tell me about that. I mean, you were going to mention it before we jumped on here, but I was like, save it for here. I'd love to know a bit more about the background and how London is involved.
Yeah, well, it's funny because people are usually like, oh, it's a normal story. I started when the founders are like, I started an agency because I was a recruiter. No, mine was none of that. So when I used to get student work permits when I was in college, and so I worked one summer in London, I worked in Paris. And so it all started at the Glassblower pub in Piccadilly Circus, where I
know that pub. Yep.
So, okay, I was not even drinking age in the US. And somehow within 3 days of being in London, I found myself in a job behind the bar at the pub.
Yeah.
And you can imagine, as an American college student, that I did not know how to pour beer. And so the first person I served said, "How fast do you type?" And then I started temping.
Wow.
And the next day, I started temping. So I temped all through college and grad school. So it all did start at the Glassblower pub in Piccadilly.
I'm sure there's some people listening to this that know it very well, especially for the London listeners at the same time. So you've obviously started your career, doing some temping. Then how did it come about to start a staffing agency? Like, where did that all come from for you in the US? And I guess interesting to know for those who are thinking about it, what made you want to do it for yourself?
Yeah. Well, the thing where it came from, and I only literally had experience in temping as admin work. So where it really came was wanting to build a business that I did it with my then husband. We wanted to build a business that we could grow and sell. So it started with that. It did not start with any recruiting experience. Hey, I want to start a staffing agency. It started with the idea of, hey, let's see if we can build something and sell it in a few years.
Yeah.
And then after that, we started brainstorming ideas, talked to a lot of different people, and came up with the idea. We did a staffing. My first business was a staffing agency, totally niche, that exists pretty much only in the US. I think Australia too. We did title insurance people.
Interesting. So insurance recruitment companies, they don't cover that? Or is that something completely different?
Well, title insurance is different than insurance. It's a weird, it's basically claiming land. It's when you purchase property, you have to have title insurance. Title insurance is like the original blockchain. I mean, not to go into this is so boring. But it's basically when you buy property, it's the chain of title back to
Fantastic. So you found a niche, and you've built this business up, and clearly I'm assuming it was very successful. At what point did you know you've kind of got a very strong business there in the States that was, I suppose, potentially in demand, and what happened from there?
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty quick because we had a really good niche, and it was good timing for our niche. So we had demand pretty quickly. We turned a profit super fast. And so then it was, it was just kind of knowing that we had a good niche. The right way we knew that is that we had great clients, and things were happening. We were billing, and we're collecting, and we were able to place people on multiple assignments.
Yeah. I guess these days it's tough for people to start a recruitment business and find a niche that ultimately for them is different to everybody else. But what advice or kind of what did you learn from the service that you were offering that was potentially making you stand out to your competitors or customers that were working with you? I suppose obviously other than just the fact that not many people did what you did.
Yeah, I mean, and some people did, and I truly believe in business. You don't have to do something different than everybody else.
Yeah.
It's not so much about the idea, it's about the execution.
Interesting.
So, I mean, we did have a really good niche, but we were the first ones actually to just really do it at a national basis, because there were some local players.
Yeah.
So there was some traction already in the niche, but then we took it to a whole other level.
Fine. And for kind of more detailed purposes, when you say the execution, I suppose, what have you haven't done this, many times. What execution do you think is most important? Because when we look at the UK market to the US market, there's different ways of recruiting sometimes, and there's different ways that people have learned how to, to recruit as such, and how to deliver to their clients. So what do you see as a good process of execution that you've learned in your career, if you don't mind sharing that secret?
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's a lot of grit. Like, I didn't know anything, it was just learning on the fly. And I think that so there's different ways that people come into this business. Some are recruiters are experienced either through in-house talent or agency, and some people don't have any experience. And I think coming into it, knowing that, I think common sense plays a lot into it, and just being honest and open, and all we're doing is really introducing people to each other. That's really like, there's only so many things that we can control, but by execution I mean actually having the tenacity to keep on figuring things out. I mean, back then, like when I first started, I mean, I literally did it from a book that was how to start a temp agency for dummies. Like if you had those like black and yellow books, now there's so much information out there on how to do it. And there's so many different, programs and things like that. I think it's important though to cut through the noise, in any kind of business, any kind of startup or whatever business you're doing. Just, at some point you just have to just start doing it. And then, like business is like a puzzle, and it can be really overwhelming to think like, I talk about how to build an 8-figure business. It's a great headline, and people can do it. People can build 9-figure businesses. A lot of people that started when I started, or not a lot, but there's people when I started, they just kept on doing it. They didn't sell, and they're billionaires now. There's different ways to do it. So, just like, I think it just, being able to know, like, this is what I want to do, and then I don't have to know all the answers now. I'm just going to figure out this very next step, this very next piece, and put it all together.
So what happened with that business? Did you sell it? Did it move? Like, where did you get to with that one?
Yeah, so we sold it. So we had one deal that fell apart at 9/11.
Yeah.
So that was pretty stressful. And then we ended up selling it. We decided to hunker down. We were going to buy companies. And then in that process, someone was like, oh no, we think we have someone who wants to buy you.
Yeah.
So we sold to a public company that was in Northern California. They ended up selling, that was called Hall Kenyon, and that was a public sale. Then they ended up selling to Kforce.
Nice.
So Kforce, so Kforce ran, it was called On Staff, my business.
Yeah.
And Kforce ran it as Kforce On Staff for many years after that.
Amazing. Fine. After that, you went and did it again?
Yeah, it was a little bit different. So I was retired for a little bit, and then there was another. So I ended up.
Can I ask you a question just to stop that for a second? So obviously the goal for a lot of recruitment companies is to build and sell, right? That's what loads of them want to do. They want to sell. They want to, take on investment, move it along, etc. For those that have done it, I find it that once someone sold their recruitment business, they've made some good money. What happens then? Like in your mind, like, do you just feel like I could just walk away and walk off into the sunset and do nothing now and chill? but most people, if anyone, if not everyone I've spoken to, ends up doing it again. I suppose, and just kind of going through the whole motions and the whole cycle of it, and trying to come out back on top, or potentially just kind of like doing it as a hobby. When you sold that business to then decide to do it again, is it because you missed the buzz? Like, what was the reason for that?
Yeah, it's, I mean, well, I was in my 30s and I was pretty
Yeah.
stupid, but I've learned a lot. I've learned a lot since then. And one thing I've learned is it's like, when you start a business, it's like gambling, you're going to the table. And even though you've done it before,
Yeah.
there's still, you still take a risk. I mean, the second business we started then we were in real estate, mortgage, financial, and we also, our biggest client was Countrywide Home Loans, who was the poster child of the financial crisis.
Yeah.
So we still survived it. But, I think being young and we had intended, that was the goal, was to sell it and retire.
Yeah.
And then, I think we just, thought just let's do it again. Let's make more money. And, I mean, a lot of it was just like, wanting to make more money. And, I probably would have done things differently now.
Yeah. What would you have done differently?
I probably wouldn't have started another business like that. But I was at that business, I was on the board, so I wasn't super involved, but then I did step in and I became CEO. That's the one that I ended up selling to John Boehmer, who was the former chairman of Adecco. So it was like, I probably would have done something different. Like I thought about opening up a shoe store, but later on I opened up a fashion business.
Right, so you got there in the end. Once you've done all of that and got it out of the way. What do you think out of that whole journey and having kind of done it successfully? Everyone's going to want to wonder why or how, and what did you do and what did it take? And obviously we know what it takes, but like, how does it feel like afterwards? Once you've kind of done something from nothing to a point where you've kind of moved it on, and then you're sitting there thinking like, shit, like now what do I do?
Yeah. Well, that's why I love what I do now. Cause I mean, now I'm basically coaching, consulting, making content, so it's really fun. And what happens is like, after you do that, it's almost like, seems like it's just normal.
Yeah.
So it almost seemed like it took me a long time to realize that other people don't really know all this stuff that I've picked up, from experience and from doing it. And I mean, there's so many different aspects to it. And like, how do you exit? And I've exited in a lot of different ways. Like I've sold I told you 2 of them, also sold one division where we just did low margin, high volume staffing. We supported MSPs, sold that division to a private equity firm. So I've had exits in all sorts of different ways. So I think, for me now in this part of my career, and I'm always looking at like like I mentioned, the vision of we wanted to sell and retire. And now I have a different vision, and I just enjoy it. Like I enjoy now knowing that like I don't do the hard stuff anymore, but I help other people do it. And that's a good place to be right now.
Did you create a network in the venture capital, like investor world, or like how do they find you? Did you kind of go to market to sell these divisions of these businesses? Like how did that come around?
Yeah, I mean, network building is so important and something that people tend to overlook. I always tell people, if you're looking to exit, network with people in the industry, go to like the SIA, ASA, get involved in other industry organizations. So with my first business, we did that, like we were involved in ASA and things like that, but we hired an investment banker. So they
just so those that don't know, what's ASA?
Oh, I'm sorry, American Staffing Association.
Cool.
I forgot.
All right, fine. Yeah. Just want to plug that in there just so they know.
Yeah, and SI is a staffing industry analyst.
Yeah.
It's another organization. So our first, we hired an investment banker. So they do the whole process. They put together a book and they bring buyers to the table. And then I sold other businesses, literally just like writing names of everybody I knew on a yellow notepad and calling everybody. And that was from networking. I go speak, staffing industry analysts, go to, one was from a career builder boondoggle that I had met somebody and saw,
are you going to the next SIA event that's coming up? I think there's one in Vegas.
Yeah, no, I'm not going, but yeah. Will you be there?
No, I mean, I've looked into these events, but for me to just take a trip to Vegas for a week and just to kind of involved in these, sometimes, can go one way or the other. But ultimately, look, I know about these, it's so important. We've got those groups in the UK.
Yeah.
I know firsthand, and I can recommend to anyone listening, if you have your own recruitment business, that it's so vital, in my opinion, that you get involved in these groups and these networking communities to be able to establish relationships and connections that you wouldn't anywhere else. Because you never know. I mean, you've just said you sold a division, not just your business. And I don't think people even think about that. They build a successful team division that's turning over X amount of money. They could just offload that to someone else and keep their business. And it's not really something that goes through your mind. So it's interesting to know.
Totally.
So again, you were talking about now what you're up to, where you're at with, your day to day at the minute. You're doing a lot of consulting. Obviously, you're, quite an influencer on LinkedIn with what you do with your posts. And again, what else are you up to?
Yeah. So it's funny because you were, I kind of pulsed in and out of the industry. Like I've had non-competes, and then I also had a clothing business, but I'm sort of coming back to staffing. I had been executive coaching all different kinds of founders, tech founders, all kinds of business owners. So I really started just super focusing. I hired a coach, and he's like, "Why are you not focusing on staffing and recruiting?" I'm like, "Okay, So so that's pretty much what I'm doing. I have a group program now. And so what we do, what I focus on are all different aspects of building a business. So I do a lot of biz dev, of course, but also really like business planning, modeling, niching, as well as team building. So, and looking towards, like, if you want to build towards an exit, what do you need to do from the beginning?
I think this is extremely valuable to a lot of, those recruitment businesses that are expanding in the US, building a US-based presence, those recruiters listening to this, thinking about setting up their own business in the US and building a team and, trying to do something special. Do you work with recruiters to help them be successful in what they do day to day, and coach them as well as business owners?
More business owners. I do some speaking and coaching for recruiters more on the biz dev side. Usually when people come to me, they're really good at recruiting. And I fill in the other blanks.
Okay, fine. So do you have I'm sure there's some sort of content material. Feel free to send it to me, and I'd love to give it to those that are asking for it on here. What advice, Diane, would you give to recruitment business owners who are starting their journey right now in the US, regardless of where they are state-wise? And what, I suppose, tips or advice would you suggest to them to build something special when times are tough, which you've worked through a few of those yourself? Like, what would you say to them?
Build something with recurring revenue.
Yeah.
So look at whether it be staffing, it could be RPO. There's a lot of different versions of recruitment process outsourcing. But look at, a lot of people start in contingent because they think it's easier. And in some ways there is a lower barrier to entry, but there are options to fund your payroll. There's a lot of different ways to do that. So don't not do staffing because it can be complicated, right? And you become an employer and things like that, but the rewards can be so much more worth it. And it's also hard to do. It's hard to do direct hire and contingent. So really look at the options. Recurring revenue, you might be a longer sales cycle, might take some hits, but in the end, what I like to help people with is build that so they're not so many recruiters start their agencies and they're just like living placement to placement. It's just like living month to month, and it's not a really great way to live. And so build your agency both for the future, what you want to accomplish, but then also you want to build it so that you're having a nice life at the same time. You can make a lot of money in this industry. And then, there are going to be, there's normal stressors too, we're dealing with people, I have so many stories. I had one temporary, someone contractor that was operating a phone sex operation for my clients' bathrooms. So, you know, there's so many, you know, I won one who embezzled. I mean, there's so many things that can happen.
You've heard it all before, but yeah.
So be able to, like, you know, roll with the punches and just know, like, this is what it is, but it can be so rewarding.
So if there's a lot of, I mean, look, again, a lot of British recruitment companies go to the States, they focus, you know, a bit like I've done with my company. I hold my hands up to it. You know, they go over with a very contingent direct hire focus model. You know, and you can work, you're telling me that I guess you work with a lot of these business owners to give them the direction and guidance to be able to turn look at their business potentially and say, right, this is what you could offer in order to become a little bit more of a reoccurring revenue business. And that kind of stuff.
What I tell people to keep it, because it can get overwhelming, just do the very first step and ask your clients how else they find out how else they're using third-party agencies.
Yeah.
So because you might be just doing this contingent stuff, and at this, you know, the things you don't see behind the scenes, like they might be giving all this other business to another agency that's doing whatever, you know, retained or executive or staffing. So just have the conversation first. And when you're talking to clients or prospects, ask questions about, understand what their pain points are.
Yeah.
So you don't have to go into it right away. You're starting your business. You've got to test things out and see what's going to work and what's going to work for you. So you don't have to be like, okay, I've got this pricing strategy. I'm going to do this RPO model, but this is what I'm going to do. Start by asking your clients, asking your prospects. So then you're going to, you know, to get those repetitions in, and then you can start formulating and figuring out what's going to be the best product market fit for you.
Fantastic. One more question. I noticed on your LinkedIn, you put there, you sold, is it the companies at $28 million? Was that right?
Yeah. So that was,
is that all of them combined, like in sales?
Yeah, that was the value. So everybody likes to hear like the one that was the biggest one. You know, everybody's like, tell me about that one. So that was
well, I'd say the best question to last.
It's a good headline, but that was the public sale.
Yeah.
And so the value of the deal was we had an earnout to which we hit the earnout. So it was that was the cash value of that one deal.
That one, $28 million.
Yes.
Fantastic. Fine. So I wanted to check that out. It was on my notes here. I just checked to query that because I wasn't sure whether that was potentially like what you've done overall, but I'm assuming if that's not overall, then the number's probably a lot higher anyway, as an overall number. But no, look, it's been a pleasure speaking with you, and you know, lovely to meet with you at the same time. I think what you've done is incredible, and there's a lot to learn from someone like yourself, and the ability to work with coaches and people that can mentor, you know, is something that I love, and I'm also, you know, involved with, but I also kind of love to work with people that can do that to help me and, you know, recommend them to all my clients, etc. So if anyone is listening and is interested, feel free to reach out directly. If you've got any information to send to me, to them, we can figure it out. But it's been a pleasure. Best of luck with everything. And I'm sure me and you will speak again.
Yeah, great to meet you. Let me know when you're out on the West Coast.
I will do. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah.